Welcome to episode 56 of Lucretius Today. I'm your host Cassius, and together with my panelists from the EpicureanFriends.com forum, we'll walk you through the 6 books of Lucretius's poem and discuss how Epicurean philosophy can apply to you today. We encourage you to study Epicurus for yourself, and we suggest the best place to start is the book Epicurus and His Philosophy by Canadian professor Norman DeWitt. For anyone who is not familiar with our podcast, please check back to episode 1 for a discussion of our goals and our ground rules. If you have any questions about the podcast, please be sure to contact us at EpicureanFriends.com for more information. This week we'll be discussing Book 4, Latin lines approximately 522 through 632, and we'll continue to discuss the operation of the senses. Now let's join the discussion with Martin reading today's text.
And now, in what manner each of the other senses distinguishes its proper object is a subject of no great difficulty to explain. And first, sound and all voices are heard when they enter the ears, and strike with their bodies upon the sense. For we must allow that sound and voice are bodies, because they have power to make impression upon the sense. For the voice often scrapes the jaws, and the noise makes the windpipe rough as it passes through. When the seeds of words begin to hurry in a crowd through the narrow nerves, and to rush abroad, those vessels being full, the throat is raked and made hoarse, and the voice wounds the passage through which it goes into the air. There is no question then but voice and words consist of corporeal particles, because they affect and hurt the sense. You are likewise to observe how much a continual speaking from morning to night takes off from the body, how much it wears away from the very nerves and strength of the speaker, especially if it be delivered in the highest stretch of the voice. Of necessity, therefore, voice must be a body, because the speaker loses many parts from himself. The roughness, then, of the voice depends upon the roughness of the seeds, as the smoothness is produced from smooth seeds. Nor are the seeds from the same figure that strikes the ears when the trumpet sounds with grave and murmuring blast, as when the sackbut rings with its hoarse noise, or swans in the cold vales of Helicon sing out with mournful notes their sweet complaint. When therefore we press out this voice from the lungs and send it abroad directly through the open mouth, the nimble tongue with curious art fashions it into words, and the motion of the lips assists likewise in the formation of them. And when the distance is not long from whence any voice proceeds, the words must of necessity be plainly heard and articulately distinguished, for in this case the voice preserves its proper frame and figure. But if the interjacent space be more than it should be, the words must needs be confused by reason of the length of air, and the voice be disordered as it passes through. Hence it is that you may hear a sound only, but discover nothing at all of the meaning of the words. A voice becomes so broken and obstructed. Besides, one sentence delivered from the mouth of a bawling crier strikes the ears of all about him. For the one general voice that is pronounced instantly breaks instantly into innumerable little voices, and so reaches every particular ear, giving a proper form and a distinct sound to every word. But that part of the voice that does not reach the ear is diffused to the air to no purpose, but there dies. Some parts strike upon solid places, and being reflected return a sound, and sometimes disappoint us with the echo or image of the word. If you well consider this, you will be able to account to yourself and others why, in solitary places, the rocks regularly return words the same with those we speak, while we seek our companions wandering over the dark mountains, or call after them aloud when they are dispersed and lose their way. I myself have seen places that return 6 words for one. The hills so reverberate the words from one another that they severally repeat them and send them back. The neighboring people fondly imagine such places to be frequented by goat-footed satyrs and nymphs, and tell stories of the fauns. They say that the dead silence of the night is disturbed by their late revels and wanton sports, that they hear the sound of music and the soft notes of the harp as the artist touches and sings to it together, that the swains all about can distinguish when Pan, shaking his garland of pine leaves upon his head with a long hung lip, runs over the hollow reeds, and so his pipe prolongs his rural song. They speak of many other strange sights and monstrous fables of the same kind. Lest perhaps there should be thought to dwell in places where the gods never come, and therefore they invent their wonderful tales like these. Or they are induced by some reason or other, as mankind in general are mighty eager after prodigies. In short, it is nothing strange that those places, though which the eye can see nothing, that through such the voice can pass and strike the ears. We can converse together in different rooms, when the doors are shut, as we frequently do, because voice can peer safely through the crooked pores of bodies, which images cannot, for they are broken if the passages are not straight. Such are the pores of glass through which all sorts of images freely find way. Besides, the voice divides itself into several little voices, and these are broken again into others as soon as the first single voice breaks into many more, like a spark of fire that leaps abroad into 1,000, so that all places about, even those behind you, are filled with voice and are moved by the sound. But all images direct their course through straight passages as soon as they are thrown off from the bodies, and therefore no one can see anything over his head. You hear words that are spoken without, yet even these, as they pass through the doors that are shut, grow weak and strike the ear in a confused manner, so that we seem to hear a sound then to distinguish the words. Nor is the account of the tongue and palate by which we taste a subject of greater nicety or more difficult to explain. And first we perceive a taste in the mouth when we squeeze the juice from our food by chewing, as if we were to press a sponge full of water in our hands to make it dry. Then the juice we draw out is spread over the pores of the palate and through the crooked passages of the spongy tongue. When the seeds of this flowing juice are smooth, they gently touch and affect all the moist and sweating surface of the tongue with sweet delight. But the seeds, the more rough and sharp they are, the more they stimulate and tear the sense, and then the pleasure of taste we feel no further than the palate. When the food is driven down through the jaws and divided among the limbs, the pleasure is gone, nor is it of any concern with what meat our bodies are nourished. If you can but digest what you eat and separate it among the members, and preserve the moist tenor of the stomach.
Thank you, Martin, for reading that long passage for us today. The theme of this one appears to be how particles make up what we hear and taste, but that's probably too superficial a way to look at it. Who would like to start in commenting?
Well, even though Martin read, I think we should try to get some comments from Martin first.
Right, Martin.
Yeah.
It's in your mind. So what do you think?
Yeah. So the thing is, it's again the thing what Lucretius does quite often. So he comes up with a very detailed explanation, which somehow appears to make sense qualitatively, but which is actually misleading from a modern science perspective. Like for sound, we don't really send off particles. It's
Right.
just a vibration essentially which moves. When whatever we send out in parallel to is like moisture, that is not critical for the sound. That is just parasitically. It just happens because the air from the lung comes out moist.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from a physiology point of view, too, it's interesting, the attention to detail about the different kinds of sound and trying to come up with how that would be. And if he understood about the vibrations, I think that would have brought some pieces together for him, because he would realize that it's, what's producing the sound in the body that is making these vibrations. I don't know if they knew about the vocal cords. I mean, he talks about the windpipe, so that's interesting. But the smooth and rough seeds, that's nothing to do with. I learned a new sackbut, which
What does
is now
sackbut
the
mean?
it's a type of trombone.
Wow.
Nobody uses really, I guess, that word much anymore, but the Italian term trombone took over in the English. So I guess the time when this was translated, they called it a sackbut.
Huh. I see
What
Monroe.
a funny word.
It is. Monroe uses trumpet, and Bailey says when the trumpet bellows deep with muffled tones, and when the barbarous Berecintian pipe shrieks with shrill buzzing sound. I may be confusing. Maybe
Goodness.
I may have misread that. Let's see. No, I'm sorry. You're right. Trumpet is in all three, including Brown. So the sackbut corresponds with Monroe's. I don't know what it corresponds to in Monroe, but in Bailey it corresponds to when the barbarous Berecintian pipe.
No, I think that's the oh, I see. Right. There's trumpet and then sackbut. So trumpet
Yeah.
and then trombone, it would be for Brown, and then Monroe, trumpet and barbarian country roused echoing. What?
Yeah, that doesn't make
Doesn't look
sense.
like something's missing there.
Maybe that's a transcription error on my part there.
And
But
then the Baracentian pipe. So maybe that's an old word for trombone too.
but you looked up sackbut
No,
and
it's
it comes up. Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
as a trombone.
Baracentian, though. It's capitalized.
Yeah.
Goddess of nature and fertility in Asia Minor and later in Greece, whose worship was marked by ecstatic and frenzied states. Cybele. Cybele.
Well, all of that's new to me.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know if maybe Brown was just picking an instrument he thought it was. Did they have trombone-like things
Oh, yeah.
back then?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Since the Renaissance, it's the sackbut's used in a lot of Baroque music I listen to.
But what about way back with Lucretius?
No.
Yeah, so he kind of probably picked the wrong word.
You've heard the word, Charles, you've heard the word sackbut before from those?
Just like how Brown also uses the word prodigy when it doesn't quite make much sense when you think of the modern definition.
Yeah, here I see it was created in the middle of the 15th century, so that's not the best word to translate probably. I wonder what this instrument was.
The sackbut?
No, the baracent, because they didn't have that back then, so that's the wrong word. So I wonder so Bailey translates it as Baracentian pipe. Wonder what that was, you know?
Could be a form of bugle.
I've got the Martin Ferguson Smith out looking for it, but I don't see it yet.
And it was something, I guess, it said hoarse, you know, so it wasn't a clean sound like most of the pipe sounds that we think of. It wouldn't be like a pan pipe.
No.
Let's see.
Even if pan is ancient,
here it
wouldn't be
is.
that.
Martin Ferguson Smith. It's when the snarling barbarous trumpet. Snarling barbarous trumpet raised loud and deep with raucous reverberating boom. And so he doesn't have two instruments. He's describing the same one. A snarling barbarous trumpet. Wow.
That sounds pretty close to Bailey to me, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe there weren't two instruments in the original.
yeah.
I mean, trumpets existed back in Egypt, but like,
Right.
they didn't have keys and valves. They were either like a bugle, like one long tube, or a type of horn.
Cool.
Okay. Do we get?
So, and that's more. This part is one thing that I think we should take note of is that he gets back into. It sounds more poetic.
Yes.
There's some scientific theory, of course, that this is what he's talking about, but it's more poetic. He uses more descriptive terms than we've just had, which is real interesting. I wonder why sound would make him wax poetic more so than images, because that section didn't seem at all, well, anything close to this. But that's pretty cool.
That's a good point, Elaine. That's a good point.
That is, actually.
His poetic demeanor, his poetic interest maybe launches him into that in discussing sound more than vision.
Well, there's the closeness of music to poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And so he noticed with speaking the labial and lingual, the labial being the lips and the lingual being the tongue, components of pronunciation. That's pretty nice. Good speech therapy there.
I guess the part that's always stood out to me in this section has been the echo discussion and the reverberation through the hills. I don't know why, but it's always been a fascinating phenomenon.
Why does he say sometimes disappoint us with the echo? Or I always just thought echoes were fun. So
that's probably a word to look at the other translations too.
Could be. It's like when somebody calls out for help and they just hear an echo.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's a good point, Charles. Mm-hmm.
Right. Like it would be somebody else, but it's just you.
Mm-hmm. I guess when you could phrase that right, it could be poetic or striking, like it would elicit something.
Bailey says scattered in vain through the air, and mock us with the echo of a word. That's probably the mock and disappoint. So the same mock for Monroe.
Yeah. Monroe and Bailey seem to be the same there.
that kind of gives you the sense of what he means by disappoint.
I think I heard Elaine exclaim when Martin read the part about
It just made me
the race
laugh.
of man is greedy to after listening years. Okay, I think Brown had it better. The
Brown said
mankind
mankind in general are mighty eager after
after
prodigies.
prodigies.
Mighty eager. That just, the phrasing cracked me up. It's
Yes.
phraseology.
Mighty is one of those words where you never use it, but you can use it to great effect.
Yeah, it has a kind of a backwoods sound to me.
Yes,
Mighty
yes. It didn't really fit with the tone of the rest of the translation.
Switch to Foghorn
Folksy,
Leghorn for a
yeah.
second.
Yeah. I guess, Martin, that probably gets lost. Your English is incredibly good, but the mighty is a word that you don't usually hear in English outside of, like Charles said, kind of a cartoon or Beverly Hillbillies kind of thing is what it comes to my
Right.
mind.
Well, let's see. This next part is, again, to me, it's historically interesting how he tried to explain what was happening with sound. But this actually is partly where his images thing gets. It would make a lot more sense to him if he understood reflections of light instead of like actually these filmy kind of images floating down.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course we're getting light reflected from things over our head, but there's not a film coming from them. So it's you actually would have to look at it, to see it. But the light is still getting reflected down. And if you have something colorful over you and it's dim enough, you're still gonna get that colorful reflection. You're gonna be able to see it even without looking up. Yeah. It's interesting. If he knew what the mechanism of reflection, you would probably say, "Oh, now I get it."
If he started there, maybe he would have gotten it right.
Oh yeah.
For some reason, when I read this, what struck me is in that passage that you're reading where he's distinguishing what sound can do that images cannot. And I see that Monroe and Bailey used the word idols instead of images in that location. I don't know. For some reason, to me, I file this away in my mind as an example of him distinguishing clearly between images going through the air that you see versus sound waves or even, I guess, smell as well. Because to me, I sometimes think of them as being similar, at least with the sound waves in particular, with the things that you see. It would seem to me that it might be logical to think of the sound waves preserving some kind of shape from the originator, just like the visual images are preserving some kind of shape from the originator, but he's clearly here distinguishing between the two things.
I think it's just this images idea is so incorrect that it is messing him up. So, but no, it's still fascinating. It's not a stupid idea, even though it's wrong. It's pretty cool.
It's clearly an interest. I mean, it's interesting to think about them in comparison, that you can hear through solid objects but not see through them, and so you've got to come up with some kind of an explanation or description of what it is that's going on differently.
Right. So if he had the vibration understanding, it would just be these pieces would fall into place.
Right.
I'm glad he didn't say that the voice would travel underneath the slit under the door.
Yeah. Because I guess I'm going to betray my science again. With glass, the image actually goes through the glass, whereas if you're talking about
no
sound,
image goes through it. Light goes through the glass.
Light goes through the glass.
Yeah.
But with sound, I guess we're saying that nothing goes through the solid object. It just sets up vibrations that then carry through to the other side. Is that correct?
Yeah. So sound is like only a vibration wave, but light has both particle and wave properties.
Yeah, that's the point.
For sound, you have to have a medium for it to travel because you have to have something to vibrate. But for light, that's not necessary.
Yeah. Air.
Is there anything else, Martin, that I should
Yeah,
say to
Martin.
distinguish those?
Martin, did you mute
There's one
yourself?
thing to say. Well, yeah, yes. Yeah, I had a trouble with unmuting.
Okay.
There's one thing to add. So in crystalline bodies, we can assign particles to sound waves as well.
Oh, okay. But sound cannot go through a vacuum, correct?
No,
You
it
have to
cannot.
have
No.
something to vibrate, right?
Yes, it needs a material medium to go through.
Okay. Which is different from light.
Yeah, photon. There's no equivalent of a photon in sound.
No, it's phonon. The phonon is the equivalent of the photon.
So I didn't know about this, Martin.
Okay, what's
this
a
is so cool, a phonon.
Yeah. And so what's a phonon, Martin?
Yeah, I mean it's from the theory of how vibrations can travel through a solid body. Then you can define an effective particle which then has properties like momentum and mass, and it behaves just like a particle.
So, wow. That's cool. I'd never heard that before. I'm
Now
looking that up now. Very neat, Martin.
So does that mean that there is a sound particle, or you're saying effectively a sound particle?
Yeah, I mean, it's effectively a sound particle because you still need a body. So some material, some matter where it goes through. So there is no particle which comes out of the matter and travels the vacuum.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm seeing here that it can be called a quasi-particle.
Yeah, like that. So because it has some properties like I mentioned, which normally are assigned to particles, then we can use that one, and it's quite effective to describe some phenomena by using these particle properties.
I like that word, phonon. I feel like I want to use that in a sentence sometime today. Somebody say, what?
This could be, I mean, this is just conjecture on my part, but I was wondering about why Lucretius is much more poetic in regards to, like, sound than, say, images. And I wonder if that's just more about poetic tradition in antiquity being more orally based.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Like Homer and Hesiod as, traveling orators and people out in the parks and theater especially.
Yeah.
Charles, what you've just raised in my mind, I don't think we've ever discussed this since we started the book, but of course, all of us are aware that the Latin is written in some kind of, what's the phrase?
Hexameter.
Hexameter. I don't even know what hexameter would mean to try to reproduce it, but the people who get into reading Latin poetry, it's very sophisticated, seems to me. Pacing and the emphasis as well. Or
think about it like a measure. Or do you read music?
No.
Okay. Well, so like dactylic hexameter is one of the most common ones. So the dactyl is the smaller unit with the accents, and the hexameter means there's 6 of them. So let's see. So a dactyl or dactylic is long, short,
but
right?
That's not the case if we're talking about classical poetry like this. There would be an additional 2 syllables, which is the case here, I believe, in Lucretius.
So the example of a dactyl in poetry that I'm familiar with is tenderly, a stressed syllable and then 2 short syllables. Is that not correct?
I'm not entirely sure.
So I may be wrong about that, but if that were right, let's say it was long, short, then that's 1 foot, and then hexameter would be 6 of those.
All I can add is that the ends of the lines don't rhyme. That's the only thing I know about Latin poetry.
Yeah,
but
it's not rhymey.
Yeah.
So, and you could just say a hexameter is a line where there are 6 stressed syllables. So however you're dividing, whatever, whether it's dactylic or whether it's spondees or trochees or whatever kind of foot you have, if you have 6 little units rhythmically with a stress in each one, then that's a hexameter line.
Well, I guess if you're Lucretius and you're working so hard to put Epicurus into hexameter, then you're really thinking about sounds and how things
Yeah,
come across.
yeah, right. Yeah,
Martin?
formal verse is a different process from writing free verse. Meant,
Yeah.
in your brain, at least for me, being a poet.
Martin, you into
Well,
poetry?
yeah, a bit only, but for example, even in verbal conversation, in those conversation salons, say 100 or 200 years ago, people would speak with rhymes and also with rhythm like this. No? So they would speak like this. No? They don't sit down and think about it. Just as they go, they talk like that. No?
Yeah, I think modern speech is less complex and musical than what it used to be like, but we read more than so we're not passing down those kind of poetic things as much speaking, although now there is a lot more interest in what they call spoken word poetry, which is bringing back some of this rhythm into the performance. And I wonder if that will change casual conversational speech.
I doubt that.
You don't think so?
I can't stand slams, poetry, and spoken word.
Really?
I can't get into it. My senior year, we watched like a 25-minute documentary of it, and oh man, I was almost asleep.
It's his take. Now it's not what I write, but it took me a while because it was different from what I was used to. But there's a poetry reading group I went to before COVID in town, and several of the participants would do that, the spoken word, and it grew on me. I really kind of like it. So let's see, taste. All these poor people that have lost their taste with COVID or had a taste distortion is probably really relevant to somebody out there listening. So we don't have these shapes, the food that they're not affecting our taste buds differently by shape. And what we know now is the taste buds are actually pretty limited and are more, sweet and salt, but the variety and the flavor is more to do with smell. Have you ever tried, there's a fun trick that you can do to distinguish between what you're tasting and what your smell adds to it. You just hold your nose, pinch your nose shut, and take a bite of something. And then while you're chewing it and you've kind of got it distributed through your mouth, and pinch your nose, and the flavor will come through. I think it's fun.
That's why food doesn't taste like anything when you're really congested or sick.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he does notice we don't have taste buds in our stomach.
Yeah, that last line, I'm still trying to decide what to say about. It doesn't sound like the motto of a dietitian or anything to say that it makes no matter what the food is which the body is nurtured, provided you can digest what you take and transmit it into the frame and keep the stomach in an equable condition of moistness. That's the Monroe version. That sounds like the anti-dietitian motto. It doesn't matter what you eat as long as you can digest it.
Make for a good argument against the bread and water crowd.
That's
I don't
a good
know.
point.
I think they would almost use that to say, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or you mean because he said meat?
Both.
Oh,
so,
or the vegetarian crowd.
Monroe translates this as food. Bailey translates it as diet. Let's see what Martin Ferguson Smith.
So that would be on the vegetarian issue if the word meat were actually in there.
I'm betting it wasn't meat.
Yeah.
Let's see. Food is what Martin Ferguson Smith. So it's probably in the time when Brown, in the mid 18th century, meat was a common word, I think, used for food, which kind of tells you, I guess, the status of meat during that time. So I don't think that's going to be an anti. This is almost, you could take it out of context and use it for, well, it doesn't matter what you eat because your taste doesn't matter because, whatever, as long as your body can use it and your stomach doesn't dry out.
But that would be taking it out of context.
I'm like, my gosh, we'd be worried about the dried out stomach. People are going to be walking, oh my God, is my stomach drying out? This reminds me of something kind of hilarious that I saw. You have to be so careful because there's a lot of nonsense going around about home remedies with COVID. And there was this, it's just wild thing going around that supposedly was from a nurse. I doubt it. I hope not. That you had to breathe in humid air or your lungs would dry out. And I like, wow. That would be awful scary if we had to worry about our lungs drying out all the time.
It would. I don't think but when you talk about the stomach drying out, that's not
Yeah.
a familiar
You would
analogy
have
to
to be
me.
so dehydrated that I think you would be dead. I think you'd have to be dead. I don't, for your stomach to dry out.
Maybe that was his point.
Yeah, right. I mean, that would be extreme dehydration, and not compatible with life.
But I think I find talking about your lungs drying out a little more intuitively possible than your stomach drying out. No matter how bad my stomach feels in any particular situation, I never analogize it to my stomach drying out.
Right?
Pretty bad when you have fluid in your lungs.
In fact, I have a feeling it'd be good for my stomach to dry out sometime. You feel like your stomach is maybe acidic or something, and so you'd like to dry it out, but will preserve the moist tenor of the stomach.
I would think
The Latin one for that.
everybody is using moistness so far. So Martin Ferguson Smith says, and keep the stomach in a constantly healthy condition. His that whole last sentence, and it does not matter at all with what kind of food your body is nourished, so long as you can digest what you take, channel it into the limbs, and keep the stomach in a constantly healthy condition. So, I mean, there's a point in there, I don't know that he's trying to make, but I'll make it, which is that humans are omnivores. Evolutionarily, we can exploit a wide variety of nutritional sources, and that has been one of the key factors to our success. You know, like some animals are limited to certain types of vegetation. They won't eat anything else, or they have to all eat meat or have to all eat vegetables. Humans have just said, well, if it won't kill me, let me eat it. So we can survive on a wide range of nutrients.
That is very close to exactly the point that he is going to be making in the next passage next week. After we finish this one, yes, about how some food can be poison to some animals, and that you don't have the same food for the same animals, I think is what he's going to be talking about. Because I was looking ahead to see what I could say as we begin to close for today, what we're going to come to next. And it looks like we've got another week or so on food and smells. We haven't hit the smells yet.
So everybody's got to be sure and have breakfast ready before they listen to this, or lunch, or whatever meal it is. It might make you hungry. Has anybody had any good meals, any good Epicurean pleasure meals lately?
Well, I had blood oranges last week, and they gave me like the worst food poisoning I've ever felt. I was sick until like Thursday. It was the strangest thing, because that was the only thing I ate that day, and I didn't have dinner the night before.
Just fresh, not.
They were a little old.
Oh.
Did you call them blood oranges?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a type of orange. They were
Thank you, Charles. That's very helpful.
They're dark red. They're dark red, Cassius. That's why they call them blood oranges.
They're dark red, and the insides are purple.
Had they already been peeled?
Yes, I just peeled them. They were the last two in the bag. So they weren't like old, but like.
But they were intact in the peel before you peeled them.
Yes.
Oh, that's weird. Because, if you peel fruit and leave it out, it can grow stuff. That sounds like it would be pretty rare unless there was something on the peel, that you got on your.
Something.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one more comment about upcoming material, because I see I was continuing to scan ahead, Elaine, because I continued to look to see how far Charles is going to have to wait before we get to the romantic love section, and we still have, it looks like we have several weeks before romantic love comes up. But I do see one of the topics that will be discussed soon is going back to the issue of whether images are always at hand or whether we're storing them. So it looks like as we go further into book 4, we're going to come back to images and sleep and that kind of thing, which I know we've been talking about on some of the forums over the last couple of weeks. And so we'll have another time to dive into that before we get to romantic love. So, all right, well, if we begin to come to a close for today, we always start with Martin, but do we have, Elaine, did you see anything else in the text that you wanted to comment on before we start to close?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, any closing thoughts for today, Martin?
Oh, no, I'm fine.
Okay. Charles?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay, well, I'll save Elaine for last because she usually has the most interesting summaries.
So I I would say when we're reading this to remember to appreciate it as a poem and appreciate the level of observations that led to some of the models, that there's a lot of detailed observation in here, and maybe this would be a good week to pay attention to enjoy your food by really paying attention to this taste and keep your stomach moist.
We didn't instantly arrive at all these modern and correct theories.
Right. And I suspect that with all the effort he put into the poetic transmission of this section of Epicurus, that Lucretius probably did not expect us to focus on keeping a moist stomach as the main point. But there's no doubt lots of really good stuff to take home from this. So. Okay, well, unless someone has something else, we'll close for the week and come back in another week or so.
Hold
What's
on,
that, Charles?
There's a footnote in the archive.org version about meat.
Is that the Brown 1743 version, or which one?
Yeah, I looked it up on archive. I'll just put it in the thread.
Does it anything we could include today? We should include now.
Let me finish reading it. No, it's just more about like the palates of humans and animals and how they differ.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little repetitive, too.
All right. Well, anybody have anything else before we close for the day?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, as always, it's been fun, and we'll come back in a week and talk again. So thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.